I never thought a split-second decision on a cold winter night would change everything I knew about my life. That evening, I was driving home after a long double shift at the hospital. I work as an ER nurse in a quiet town just outside Portland, Oregon. The snow had been falling heavily all day, and now it coated every sidewalk, car, and street sign in sight. The wind cut through my coat like knives. I was exhausted and craving nothing more than a hot shower and a warm bed. But as I pulled up to a red light near the gas station on 14th Street, I saw someone curled up on the sidewalk. Just a lump of blankets at first glance, except the blankets were torn and soaked through, and beneath them, a man lay shivering, his skin pale, lips tinged blue. I should have just kept driving like everyone else probably had. But something about him stopped me. A strange feeling like I was being pulled toward him. I hit the hazard lights, jumped out of my car, and knelt beside him. He smelled of alcohol, his beard wild and matted, but his eyes were alert and terrified, like he was fighting something inside and out. I wrapped my coat around him and helped him into the back seat. He was weak, mumbling words I could barely make out. But one sentence cut through everything: "You shouldn't have saved me, son." I froze. Did he just call me son? Maybe he was just delirious. Drunk. Confused. That happens all the time in the ER. Still, my stomach twisted. I drove him to the hospital and got him admitted immediately. He was suffering from hypothermia, dehydration, and a few cuts that had become infected. He needed warmth, fluids, and rest. As they prepped him for treatment, he gripped my wrist with surprising strength. His eyes locked onto mine, and he whispered, "Thank you, Daniel." My heart skipped a beat. I hadn't told him my name. I tried to shake it off. Maybe he overheard someone. Maybe it was just a coincidence. But I couldn't let it go. Something about him haunted me. I visited his room every day while he recovered. I told myself it was just professional concern. But in truth, I was trying to figure out why I couldn't stop thinking about him. On the third day, when he finally had the strength to sit up, I asked, "Why did you call me Daniel?" He looked away, silent for a long moment. Then he reached into the torn pocket of his coat, a coat we had bagged up when he was admitted, and pulled out a weathered photograph. The edges were torn. The colors faded. But I recognized the woman in the picture instantly. My mother, and the baby in her arms was me. I stared at the photo like it might catch fire in my hands. "Where did you get this?" I demanded. His voice cracked as he answered, "Because I'm your father, Daniel. And I've waited 30 years to see you again." Everything stopped. The beeping monitors. The muffled voices outside the hospital room. The snow against the window. All I could hear was my heartbeat. My father left us when I was 3. That's what Mom told me. She said he abandoned us, that he was a coward, that we didn't need him. She raised me alone. I never asked questions. I learned not to. But now this man, this homeless stranger I found freezing in the snow, was claiming to be the one person I had been taught to hate. And somehow, I believed him. I didn't say a word after he told me he was my father. I just stood there, clutching the faded photograph, as if the truth would somehow reveal itself from the grainy edges of that torn memory. I left the hospital room in silence, not because I believed him entirely, but because a part of me already did, and that was terrifying. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at my childhood bookshelf, the posters I had never taken down, the boxes of letters my mom had written me over the years. I kept hearing his voice, not just in the hospital room, but in that first moment on the sidewalk when he called me son, when he said my name. It wasn't the voice of a manipulator. It was broken. Honest. By morning, I knew what I had to do. I drove across town to my mom's house. The same cozy little two-bedroom I grew up in. She opened the door wearing her usual robe, surprised to see me unannounced. "What's wrong, honey?" she asked immediately. I didn't say a word. I just pulled the photo out of my pocket and handed it to her. Her face changed instantly, not with confusion, but recognition. She took one shaky breath and sat down. "Where did you get this?" she whispered. "I found a homeless man 3 nights ago. He had hypothermia. I took him to the ER. He had that photo in his coat pocket." She didn't ask his name. She didn't ask what he looked like. She just nodded slowly and looked at the floor. "It's him, isn't it?" I asked. My mother didn't answer right away. Then she finally spoke, and her voice sounded older than I'd ever heard it. "Yes. That's your father." The room spun. All these years, I had accepted one version of the truth, that he had abandoned us, that he didn't want me. Now, that version cracked wide open. "Why didn't you ever tell me he tried to come back?" I asked. Tears welled up in her eyes. "Because he didn't just leave, Daniel. He disappeared. One night he went out to buy formula and never came home. I called the police. Hospitals. Nothing. For weeks. Months. I thought he was dead. I was alone, with no money, no help. And then I found out he'd been picked up drunk a few towns over, living on the streets. That's when I decided to stop looking. I couldn't bring that man back into your life. I thought I was protecting you." I sat down, my body heavy with things I didn't know how to carry. "But he kept that photo," I said. "For 30 years. She nodded, wiping her face. "He wasn't always like that. He was kind. Smart. We fell in love young. Too young. Then he lost his job. Then he lost his father. Then the drinking started, and when the drinking took over, he was no longer the man I married. I wanted to be angry with her for keeping this from me, for choosing silence over the truth. But looking into her eyes, I saw the fear she carried for decades, the pain of raising a child alone while mourning a man who was still technically alive. I returned to the hospital that afternoon. When I entered his room, he looked up like a child expecting punishment. "You kept this photo all these years?" I asked, holding it up. He smiled faintly. "It's all I had left." I pulled a chair closer and sat down. For the first time, I looked at him not as a stranger, not as a patient, but as a man who had once held me as a baby. "I need to understand," I said. "Why did you leave?" He didn't flinch. He didn't lie. "I was weak," he said simply. "When my father died, something broke inside me. I didn't know how to be a man. I started drinking. I thought I could still be a husband and a father, but every time I looked at you, I felt like a fraud. That night I left to get formula. I wasn't planning on running. But I ran. I kept running. For years. I was too ashamed to come back." I looked at the 4 in his arm, the bruises on his skin, the tremor in his fingers. A man who had spent most of his life paying for one mistake. "I thought you hated me," he added, voice cracking. "But I never stopped loving you, Daniel. Not one day. The room fell silent. I stared out the window where snow had started to fall again. I don't know what to do with this, I admitted. You don't have to do anything, he said softly. Just, thank you for saving me, even if you never forgive me. I stood up slowly. I don't know if I can forgive you yet, I said truthfully. But I'm not walking away. Not yet. His eyes welled up. He didn't speak again. He just nodded. And in that small, quiet hospital room, something began to thaw, not just the cold from the outside, but something inside both of us. The weeks that followed were unlike anything I'd ever experienced. I juggled long ER shifts with quiet visits to the hospital room where my biological father slowly recovered. Every day, I learned something new, not just about him, but about myself. At first, our conversations were short, careful. He asked about my childhood, what kind of toys I liked, what sports I played. He listened intently as if trying to store each word like treasure. I realized he didn't want to rewrite the past, he just wanted a chance to witness the life he'd missed. I brought him a change of clothes, a decent pair of shoes, and when he was discharged, I booked him a room at a small transitional shelter that offered counseling and a meal plan. He didn't ask for any of it. In fact, he seemed unsure of whether he deserved it. But the truth was, helping him gave me a strange sense of peace, not closure, not yet, but something close. Still, I hadn't told anyone at the hospital who he really was. To them, he was just another patient I'd taken a special interest in. And maybe I wasn't ready for anyone else to know. Maybe I wasn't even ready to admit to myself what was happening, that the man who once vanished from my life was now slowly re-entering it, day by day. One Sunday afternoon, I invited him to lunch. Just a small diner near the waterfront, nothing fancy, but warm. We sat by the window, snowflakes dancing outside like the day I first saw him on the sidewalk. Over grilled cheese and soup, he finally asked, "What did your mom tell you about me?" I stirred my coffee slowly. "That you left. That you didn't come back. That you chose drinking over us." He nodded, quietly accepting the version of himself that had lived in my mind for 3 decades. "She wasn't wrong," he said. "I did all those things. I don't blame her. I blame me." I watched him, the way his hands shook when he drank from the cup, the way he avoided eye contact when he spoke of the past. He wasn't trying to make excuses. He was simply carrying it. Every mistake. Every regret. "I hated you for most of my life," I said quietly. "I used to imagine what I'd say if I ever saw you again. I thought I'd scream. Yell. Demand answers. But now that you're here, I don't feel that rage anymore. Just a weird kind of sadness." "I deserve that," he replied. "All of it?" "No, you don't," I said. "You don't deserve to live the rest of your life believing that you're nothing but your worst moment." He looked up then, surprised.